Hey everybody, it's Linnea. Today I'm going to be mixing and matching some products from LDRS Creative. I'm going to be using some stamp sets from the summer release, as well as an older die set, the In the Grass dies, and the Rainy Day Stencil, which is an older stencil, but it is one of my favorite stencils, and I use it on pretty much every single scene card that I make. So let's start off here. I have the Build a Tree stamp set, and this stamp set is exactly as the name implies. You can build a tree with this stamp set, and I love that everything is separate. So the main trunk of the tree is separate, and then there's two different branches and a few different kinds of leaves. Now I know that the one is an oak leaf, and I'm using the other one, and I'm not a botanist, so I'm not entirely sure which leaves these are, but they're like the flat oval shaped leaves, and I love these kinds of leaves for spring and summer trees, so that's the one that I'm going to be using. Now I do have the main trunk of the tree kind of hanging off because I'm going to be covering up the bottom of that anyway, so I don't need to stamp the whole thing. I stamped all of my images with Raven Hybrid ink, and I also stamped a bunch of images from the Carefree Gnomes stamp set. I'm going to have this large tree from the Build a Tree stamp set be, I don't want to say the focal point of my card, but it's going to be the largest thing on my card. I want this to be like a big tree, and then all of these little mini gnomes all around it. So I love that you can mix and match these stamp sets, and I like that the tree is going to be big and then the gnomes are going to be small. And the gnomes are a Pocket Pal stamp set, so you can definitely see how they're smaller, and so you can put a bunch of these images onto one card and have them not overwhelm the card. So I'm just doing some simple alcohol marker coloring. I used a few colors of browns for the tree, and the tree ended up a little bit darker than what I had envisioned in my head, but I left it as is, and I'm just going to work with it, and it's going to be a dark barked tree. So now I'm moving on to coloring my gnomes from the Carefree Gnomes stamp set. And as I color, I'm keeping in mind that I don't want to overwhelm this card with color. So I colored the mushroom first because in my mind, all mushrooms should be red with white spots. I don't know why. That's how I color mushrooms, and that's how I've always done it, and I always find myself going back to that. So since I used some red in the mushroom, I used some for a couple hats, and then I brought in some blue, and I'm going to use some of the little hats are going to be blue, some of the pants, some of the shirts are going to be blue. Then I'm going to bring in some greens and some yellows as well. Once I have all of my coloring done, I'm going to just use the coordinating dies for the Build a Tree stamp set as well as the Carefree Gnomes stamp set. And I'll just line these dies up. They line up really easily. I'll hold them in place with some low tack tape, and then I will die cut out each one of these little images. Now I did color a few too many leaves and a few too many gnomes, but that's okay. I keep them in my stamp pocket with my stamp set, so the next time I want to create with these images, I already have some cut and colored. Okay, so now let's start building this scene. This is the Rainy Day stencil, and you can see I have some masking tape on here, and that's because I just want to use this cloudy border. I love this cloudy border. I use it all the time, so this masking tape has pretty much had a permanent spot on this card for a long time. I do love the raindrops as well, but I definitely use the cloudy border. I get a lot of use out of this stencil. So I'm using Marina Madness ink and just lightly blending off the top of that stencil and then shifting the stencil down and also shifting it left to right with each application of ink so that I have a variation in those puffy, cloudy borders. Now I'm going to use the In the Grass dies, and I'm just deciding which grassy border I want. Do I want a straight one or do I want the hill? And I ended up going with the hill. Either one would look great. I just like to have that little hill in my foreground. I'm using a little bit of Pistachios Aplenty hybrid ink to blend this ink on. You could definitely cut this out of green cardstock or patterned paper even, but I like the look of the ink blending, and since I had ink blending in the background, I decided to carry that over to my grass as well. Okay, so now this part of the card is what took me the longest, not because it is difficult, but because I take a long time playing around with my images and figuring out where I want them to go on my card. So I did not leave all of that in here because it probably took me a good 20 minutes to figure out the perfect placement for all of these little images. I did leave some of it in so you can kind of see my thought process. I just lay everything down. I don't adhere anything at first. I just lay it down and kind of get a rough idea of how the card is going to look in my head. And then once I get that idea, that is when I start slowly gluing things down. And I do it one step at a time. So since the tree is going to be the largest part of my background, I'm going to start with that first. From there, I'll glue the grassy border in place, and then I'll just kind of build out from there. So since my tree is adhered down, I'm going to add my leaves on, one little bushel or cluster at a time, and I am just kind of using these leaves and building up this tree. I'm not going to put a lot of leaves on because this is kind of like the underside of the tree. You can't see the full bushy effect of the top of the tree. So I'm just having some of these leaf clusters coming off of the branches. And anything that hangs off the edge, I'll just flip over my card and trim it off. No big deal at all. I arranged all of my little gnomes from the Carefree Gnomes stamp set. I popped all of them up on foam. The rest of the card is flat, so the grass I glued down flat, the tree and the leaves I glued down flat so that I could pop up every single one of these gnomes. And I have that little one flying in the background, and then I have the two kind of carefree walking in the background and then two dancing. And I kind of move them down towards the bottom of my card so it looks like they are more towards the front of the scene. That's going to complete this card. I'm going to add a little bit of shimmer just because I think gnomes are magical and they should shimmer. So I added some glitter to the gnomes as well as to the leaves on the tree. And that is going to finish and complete this card. Thank you guys so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed this fun and happy little card. And I'll see you again really soon. Bye!